What's up everybody on YouTube? AJ Russ back to discuss another video. Today we're going to be talking about the biggest takeaways from NFL Week 9. Oh my gosh guys, this was a really good week in terms of entertaining plays. I know y'all saw that Saquon Barkley play against the Jaguars. Oh my goodness, that was disgusting. But of course on Thursday Night Football, that Garrett Wilson catch, one-handed catch against the Texans, that was crazy too. Just a lot of great plays, and we're into the thick of it in the football season. Week 9, almost week 10 already. Season is moving fast and we're starting to see these teams separate. Teams like the Detroit Lions had a huge divisional win against the Green Bay Packers. They play a physical brand of football, leading the league in scoring right now. Offensively, they're playing really well, and we'll see if they're buyers at the trade deadline. Also, that's another storyline. The trade deadline is coming up in the next couple of days. By the time that this video will be uploaded, it'll be the same day that the trade deadline has passed. So we'll see what moves will transpire and take place. I'll try to include as many as possible in the time frame before I post this video, but also just other teams to talk about. The Eagles look good. The Commanders continue to win, being atop of the NFC East. The Falcons get a huge dub against the Dallas Cowboys, who seem like every single week they're falling apart. Just a lot of questions. And now you have Dak Prescott dealing with a hamstring injury. You have CeeDee Lamb with a shoulder injury. Still have Micah Parsons out, DeMarcus Lawrence out, Brandon Cooks out. It just looks like this is not the year for the Cowboys. And shout out to my boy Justin. He mentioned this to me, that in election years the Cowboys are trash. Dak gets hurt and they miss the playoffs. In 2020 we saw that, obviously not in 2016, but right now in 2024 it's a similar pattern. You saw that video that Dak said that we freaking suck. Of course I'm, cleaning it up, but yeah, I mean, and honestly as a Cowboys fan it does look like that right now. It's not a beautiful time, but if you're a fan of football, it's a beautiful time to watch all these different games. In the AFC you have the Ravens, who had a huge win against the Broncos. You of course had the Chiefs and Buccaneers playing on Monday Night Football. The Bills beat the Dolphins again. The Dolphins just cannot beat the Bills. I don't know, but we're gonna talk about that later in the video, of course. But just a lot of interesting storylines to talk about. Also, head coaching firing. The New Orleans Saints fired Dennis Allen. They started off 2-0 and have lost 7 straight. Lost to the Panthers on Sunday. Just looking bad right now, but it's a lot to talk about from NFL Week 9 in this recap, and I'm looking forward to talking about every single game individually. But with that being said, guys, before we talk about NFL Week 9, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. You already know we post about here videos about the NBA, NFL, Marvel, DC, pop culture, cooking videos, shorts, reels, things of that nature. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at SwaggyRuss, and on TikTok at SwaggyRuss02. And with that being said, let's talk about NFL Week 9. The first game that we had to talk about from NFL Week 9 was a game that took place between the Jets and the Houston Texans on Halloween, and the Jets were able to win that game 21-13. For New York, it was an ugly first half. They weren't able to get anything going. Malachi Corley, of course, had that touchdown, but he dropped it. It ended up being a touchback, and at the time, you could have really put that moment in a nutshell of the Jets' season so far, but they were able to get things going in the second half, and we saw the Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson connection. Also, Aaron Rodgers connected with Devontae Adams really for a game-sealing touchdown. Rodgers played a good game in the second half. Like I said, they started off slow in the first half, so nothing really there, but ultimately he completed 22 out of his 32 passing attempts, threw for 211 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. A good performance. And of course, I mentioned Garrett Wilson had 9 receptions for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both touchdowns coming off of one-hand grabs, but the second one specifically, catch of the year for sure. Up to this point, had the shin down, had the leg down, and ultimately it counted. That was a really good and rejuvenated win for the Jets, because it felt like if they lost this game, their season was in all cases over. And it's still going to be a hard climb, but this gave them some hope and some momentum. For the Houston Texans, being from this Houston area, I do not envy their fans at all. Everyone is tired of Bobby Slowick and his play calling. It's crazy because after last year, how electric their offense was with CJ Stroud, you would have never fathomed that, but they've been limited at times. And yes, they have a 6-3 record, but CJ Stroud has no time. Every single play, the defense is in his eyes. He has to try to extend plays, and it's tough, especially with Stephon Diggs being out for the season. Nico Collins, who will return soon, but he's still out, so that's another weapon down. And Tank Dell, he had a good game, had 6 receptions for 126 receiving yards. But besides him, and then Joe Mixon, who has been insanely good for the Texans this year. A physical runner, had 24 carries and 106 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. But besides them two, who else is really producing for the Texans right now? So it's tough for them. They're still leading in the AFC South right now, and I still expect them to win the division, because people have this talk about the Colts, and we'll talk about them later. I don't think they're going to catch up, especially with the Texans sweeping them for the season. But the Texans, they certainly need some help and should be buyers at the trade deadline to try to get some offensive line help. But it's a good win for New York, and they have some hope right now.
Guess what, son? You're next.
This next game was a matchup in the NFC South between the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints, and the Panthers actually were able to get their second win of the season, winning 23-22. Bryce Young led that team to a game-winning drive. Shout out to him, because we know he was benched after week 2 of the season. A lot of question marks about him, bringing in Andy Dalton, things of that nature, and there's a lot of conversation about Bryce Young being an early bust already, but I think it's a good win for his confidence. Nothing too crazy of a stat line, only had 171 passing yards, a touchdown, and interception, but I'm happy for Bryce Young getting that win. Also, Chuba Hubbard had a good game, had 2 rushing touchdowns on 72 182 rushing yards. Not really too much to decipher from this game from Panthers perspective besides the win, because the Saints, I believe, in every single fashion of the game had better stats and things of that nature, but still ended up losing. And prayers for Chris Olave for sure. It seems like he's doing okay, at least from the hospital after that concussion. A lot of people were talking about Derek Carr throwing that hospital ball. From the outside seeing in, especially from highlight wise, it does look like a bad ball, throwing it up high like that just for him to get knocked off. And Tom Brady has talked about that with quarterbacks recently and in the past few years, trying to protect your receivers, throwing the ball in safe places. So that's something there. And I know y'all saw the Michael Thomas tweets too. It's tough. And then they fired Dennis Allen too. It's a hot mess right now in New Orleans after they started off the season 2-0. They looked like a weapon at the beginning, but now looking at it, they beat the Panthers in a week 1 matchup, and obviously they lost against the Panthers in this game. And then the Cowboys, not the greatest wins this season, so there needs to be a rebuild in New Orleans, but it's a good win for Carolina. This game ended up being close, but ultimately it paid no dividends for the New York Giants as the Washington Commanders beat the Giants 27-22. The Commanders now have a 7-2 record. It's really a testament to how great Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn have really reinvigorated this franchise in Washington, because they're having their best season so far, best start since 1996, leading the division in the NFC East and getting another divisional win. And now the Giants have a 2-7 record. I know y'all saw Daniel Jones had 0 passing yards at halftime, but had a touchdown too. Low-key, that is the most Daniel Jones stat ever. But yeah, it's just tough in New York right now. I'll continue to talk about it. I don't think Brian Daboll is a problem. I think it's a roster and management type of thing, because when you let Saquon Barkley go, you already know what that case entails for your season. And they have a solid defense with people like Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, but it's not enough. Offensively, you have Malik Neighbors too, but like I said, it's just not enough. But from Washington's perspective, like I said, they are arguably the story of the year. Yes, Jaden Daniels is a legit MVP candidate. As a rookie, had 209 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Also had 35 rushing yards. Austin Eckler also stepped in of the absence of Brian Robinson Jr., had a rushing touchdown, played solid football. Same with Rodriguez and McNichols. And Noah Brown has been playing really good and solid for this offense. Was a solid player for CJ Stroud last year in the 2023 season for the Texans, and same thing for Washington too, coming off of that game and that Hail Mary catch against the Bears specifically. So I just like how Washington is playing right now. No one expected them to be as good as they are this season. A lot of people saw the potential obviously from Jaden Daniels being the number 2 pick, but starting off like this, especially after a player like CJ Stroud had an electric rookie year last year, you can make the argument that Jaden Daniels is having an even better rookie year too. So it's a great win for them. I briefly talked about it a little bit in the intro, but the Buffalo Bills got another win against the Miami Dolphins, winning off of a 61-yard field goal from Tyler Bass to win the game 30-27. And like I've been saying since the offseason, the Bills continue to own this division and they'll win it again, especially now with their competition in the division being the Dolphins, who are 2-6, and the Jets, who are 3-6 at the second spot in the division. Like, come on now. The Bills are now 7-2, playing really good football, and a lot of people were chattering and talking about Josh Allen and all the turnovers last year. Well, their philosophy and brand of football has been so complimentary that he has only thrown 2 interceptions this season, and they've come in the past 2 weeks. Still playing really good football, completed 25 out of his 39 passing attempts, had 235 passing yards, 3 touchdowns and an interception. And if I'm not mistaken, those 39 attempts, that might be the most that he's thrown the ball this year so far. So it really speaks to how physical of a style they play. Their defense also playing complimentary football. Ray Davis, rookie running back, he also had 2 receptions for 70 receiving yards and a touchdown too. So getting it not only in the backfield, but also receiving wise too. Mac Hollins also had a receiving touchdown. Same with Quentin Morris. So the Bills, they're just really able to spread the football out and play some good ball right now. And that's why they have the record that they have. And for the Miami Dolphins, it's getting late early. You have Tua back. This is his 2nd game back, and he didn't play bad statistically. Really efficient, actually. Completed 25 out of his 28 passing attempts, 231 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. I will say they put themselves in good position to win the game, but they weren't able to crack through. And like I said, the Bills, off of that Jordan Poyer play, that really set them up perfectly to end up closing out the game. Von Achane had 63 rushing yards and a touchdown. Also had 56 rushing yards. Achane also had 58 receiving yards and a touchdown. And Tyreek Hill had 80 receiving yards. And Jaden Waddle had a touchdown, but -4 receiving yards. Kind of like a Daniel Jones stat like I mentioned from the other game. But yeah, the Miami Dolphins is tough. Really, when Tua got hurt, it just put their team in a downward spiral, and he's back now, but it might be too late. But we never know. Teams get hot all the time, but the Bills are going to win this division again, and it's a good dub. Back to life, back to reality for the Cleveland Browns. The Los Angeles Chargers beat the Browns 27-10. The score was 20-3 at halftime. We know what time it was, and the Chargers now have a 5-3 record. And realistically, like I said, Jim Harbaugh coming in, you have to look at this team in Los Angeles being a potential wild card. They have the Broncos in the division, in the AFC West, and of course the Chiefs, who are going to win that division. We can easily say that right now. Forbid anything significant happening, but the Chargers, offensively and defensively, really complimentary football. In the running game, J.K. Dobbins had 85 rushing yards on 14 carries for 2 touchdowns. Justin Herbert completed 18 out of his 27 passing attempts for 282 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Quentin Johnson had some explosive plays, had 4 receptions for 118 receiving yards and a touchdown. They're just playing really good football, and I'm glad for Jim Harbaugh, for Justin Herbert specifically, because they made the playoffs in 2022, but they did blow that huge lead against the Jaguars, so that was tough. And a lot of people give him flack. Some people think that Justin Herbert is overrated, but also you have to look at the roster he's been surrounded Carolina with too, and a lot of the injuries that he's dealt with and the team has dealt with too. So it's a really testament and a shout out to the Chargers with how good they've been playing. And from the Browns perspective, I feel bad because Jameis Winston, he had a really good game in that huge upset over the Baltimore Ravens in week 8. But like I said, back to life, back to reality. He saw in Tampa Bay in that 2019 season, had 30 passing touchdowns, but also 30 interceptions. And he had 3 interceptions in this game. So you see that streaky football with Jameis Winston. Also had 235 passing yards and a touchdown. But the bad outweighed the good for the Browns in this game. And they're probably going to be sellers at the trade deadline, honestly. But it's a good win for the Los Angeles Chargers. They're playing good football. This game between the Patriots and the Titans was one that was more exciting than we probably anticipated. Going into overtime, but the Titans ended up winning in overtime 20-17. But the way it was sent to overtime with that Drake May touchdown buying time, that was a beautiful play for sure. With all things being said, yes, they lost the game. Yes, the Patriots now have a 2-7 record, and the Titans are also 2-6. This was just their second win, so let's not get too crazy. There's some good things to take away from Drake May. I think that in New England, if you're a Patriots fan, especially after the past few years being tough, after the post-Tom Brady era and now post-Bill Belichick era, that's an encouraging thing that you have your quarterback and a guy, but you still have a lot that you need. Some more weapons we'll see in the 2025 draft, of course. Potential Travis Hunter, sweepstakes, and other skill players of that nature. And we saw Drake May throw a couple of interceptions in this game, but like I said, that touchdown in the fourth quarter, that was impressive, but there's a lot of flaws in this team. We already knew that. That's nothing new. But Drake May also had 8 carries for 95 rushing yards too, though, so that's another component of his game. It really benefits the Patriots, so that's good for them. For the Titans, like I said, it's a good dub. Mason Rudolph played solid football, had 240 passing yards, 2 touchdowns and interception, completed 20 out of his 33 passing attempts. Tony Pollard had a really explosive game. As a Cowboys fan, I miss him. I'm not gonna lie. Had 28 carries for 128 rushing yards. Calvin Ridley also had 73 receiving yards, and Nick Westbrook, I can't say his name, I'm sorry, had 50 receiving yards and a touchdown too. So the Titans, they did enough to win this game. For the Patriots, like I said, Drake May is your guy, but you still have a long way to go. The Atlanta Falcons beat the Dallas Cowboys 27-21, and that score is really deceiving in my opinion because it wasn't that close. Specifically after Dak Prescott got hurt with that hamstring injury, I knew it was over. No disrespect to Cooper Rush, he's a solid backup, but like, come on, man. And that's been a nutshell of this season, just a lot of false hope. And we have to look at Jerry Jones. He is the reason why this team is doing this bad. Yes, in football, when you pay your quarterback, you're not going to be able to spread a lot of money around, but Jerry Jones didn't even try to add any weapons in terms of the draft, in terms of free agency, really. That's the main one. He just thought that, oh, I know I'm going to have to pay Dak, I'm going to have to pay CD, so let's not even try to fill out this roster with solid components at all. And yeah, the injuries are going on right now, but every team deals with that, especially at this point in the season going into week 10 now. You can't use that excuse. It's just ugly right now as a Cowboys fan in my perspective. I'm just optimistic that they'll be bad enough to get an impact player in the draft, and I believe they have 10 draft picks in the 2025 draft, so hopefully they'll be able to make something shake and also be aggressive in the free agent market too. Don't put all your chips in the draft basket because that's essentially what they kind of did this year, not paying off well. Yes, you want to have young impact players, but it's just ugly in Dallas right now. And I'm never an advocate for people to get fired, especially coaches in the league. It's so hard, the opportunity in the NFL to climb your ranks up and all the time and preparation it takes to get into it, but man, it's hard with Mike McCarthy right now, and he's not a bad coach. He's a solid coach. He won a Super Bowl in Green Bay. Of course, they had a good roster then in 2010, which was a while ago, by the way, but it's just so frustrating seeing this offense play and defense play. Offensively, they're archaic, and he calls the plays too offensively. There's no creativity, there's no motion. They have 12 people on the field offensively. They have 10 starters on the field defensively. Come on now, that is insane. That's a lack of discipline, and that has to be on coaching. There's no other way to put it. I'm sorry, but that's true. And then don't get me started on that 4th and 2 play where you had Brian Anger throw the football. Bro, if you're going to go forward on 4th down, just keep Dak in the offense out there. But that's the Cowboys in a nutshell, especially this season. Just constant dysfunction. They went 12-5 the previous 3 seasons, and now they already have 5 losses, being 3-5 already. So it's bad, man. Like I said, I'm not an advocate for coaches to get fired, but if there was a coach that I would want the Cowboys to eye out, a lot of people say Bill Belichick. I'm not with that. I want Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, and have him come in and call plays too. Because man, how creative his offense is in Detroit and how they've been the past 2 years, all the explosive plays, the creativity. Like I said, the Cowboys, they lack creativity offensively. If Ben Johnson was a coach and called plays for Dallas, I think that they would be significantly better, especially also adding in the right personnel through draft and free agency. You never know, but like I said, it's the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones that we're dealing with, so he's always going to do what doesn't make sense. But for the Falcons, it's a good win. They dominated the game, both sides of the football. Kirk Cousins played really efficient, completed 19 out of his 24 passing attempts for 222 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Bijan Robinson had 86 rushing yards. Tyler Algier had a rushing touchdown. Drake London had a receiving touchdown before getting injured. And Darnell Mooney had a wide open receiving touchdown. Oh my gosh, don't get me started on that. Ray McLeod too. Just played really good football. It's a good win for Atlanta, and they're probably going to win NFC South, especially with the Buccaneers not having Chris Godwin, Mike Evans still being injured, and especially with them losing 2 games to the Falcons this season already. So that's tough for them. But for the Cowboys, like I said, it's just ugly right now. Dak Prescott, hamstring injury. CeeDee Lamb, shoulder injury. Micah Parsons still out. DeMarcus Lawrence still out. Deron Bland still hasn't made a season debut. It's ugly. It is not organized. It is just a hot mess right now. And like I said, embrace the tank. Ashton Genty to Dallas, Ollie Gordon to Dallas. Somebody, please, because man, they need so much. But the Falcons, they look good. Really good win for the Cincinnati Bengals as they beat the Las Vegas Raiders 41-24. This game was never really close. And shout out to Joe Burrow, man. He's been playing really good football. If his team was like 6-3 or 7-2, something like that, I think that he would potentially be one of the leading candidates for the MVP. But the team now only being 4-5, which they are starting to play better football. They're almost at 500. If they can beat the Ravens on Thursday Night Football in Week 10, they would have a 500 record. We'll see about that. And they will be lit. We'll see. I just don't understand why the Bengals always start off slow. That's not a good recipe for success ever. But I guess it works out for them, and it'll work out if they can climb their way into the playoff picture. But Joe Burrow dominated this game, completed 27 out of his 39 passing attempts, threw for 251 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception. A really good, efficient game. Chase Brown had 27 carries for 120 rushing yards. Mike Gesicki had 5 receptions for 100 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase didn't even really have to get too involved in this game because, like I said, they dominated. Only had 43 receiving yards, 7 receptions, no touchdowns, but still leading the league in receiving touchdowns. So shout out to Jamar. Chase Brown also had a receiving touchdown. Yoshi Voss also had a receiving touchdown, and same with Drew Sample too. The Bengals, like I said, they're looking good right now. The Raiders, not too much to talk about. Desmond Ridder and also Gardner Minshew starting in this game. They ended up firing their offensive coordinator Luke Getsy after this game too. Just a hot mess. They're going to need to draft a quarterback in 2025. I've talked about that with the Raiders repeatedly. There's not really too many intriguing storylines to talk about besides them having Max Crosby and players of that nature. It's just rough, but it's a good win for Cincinnati. This game was another blowout from an AFC North team to an AFC West team as the Baltimore Ravens dominated the Denver Broncos, winning 41-10. Ravens are now 6-3, and they play with a sense of urgency. I think that Cleveland Browns loss in Week 8 really woke them up and pissed them off. A good type of wake-up call that they needed to get things right in Baltimore. Let's go through the stats with Lamar Jackson. Didn't even have to throw the ball a lot. Completed 16 out of his 19 passing attempts. Had 280 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Playing their physical brand of football. Running the ball. Derrick Henry had 23 carries for 106 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, but seems to still be in the prime of his career. It's a huge testament in how Derrick Henry takes care of his body, how great of a running back and all-time great of a running back that he is. And as a Cowboys fan, I'm still sick that Jerry Jones didn't even try to pursue him. Just gross, but he's been so beneficial and great for the Baltimore Ravens. Receiving wise, Zay Flowers had a game, had 5 receptions for 127 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. They just looked really dominant offensively and defensively in this game, and they beat a Broncos team that had been playing really good football, now have a 5-4 record, but defensively controlling things. Bo Nix had played good in his games, but in this game, not good. Completed 19 out of his 33 passing attempts, had 233 passing yards, but no touchdowns, and threw an interception, so they weren't really able to get anything going for the Broncos. I still think that there is some hope for them to be competitive because they've certainly overcame expectations, still being over 500 this year, but the Ravens, they look dominant. They're going to be one of those teams in January trying to edge off and beat the Chiefs to try to get into the Super Bowl and win a Lombardi, and they look really good and explosive right now. And you can make the argument that Lamar Jackson, among other players, he's one of the leading candidates for the MVP right now. After the Bears lost in devastating fashion in Week 8 against the Washington Commanders from that Hail Mary play, the Cardinals blew the Bears out by a dub, winning 29-9. And after the Bears were 4-2, now they are even at 500 at 4-4, and things aren't going to get easy for them. The Cardinals, they look really good though. We can talk about them, the winning team first, have a 5-4 record, atop of the NFC West right now. No one expected that. I don't care what you say. Even if you're a Cardinals fan, no one expected them to be this good this year right now. It's a testament to Jonathan Gannon, how things are going with them. Kyler Murray didn't even have a crazy game, completed 13 out of his 20 passing attempts for 154 passing yards, but really it was a running game that dominated for the Cardinals, and people like James Conner has been dominating for the Cardinals the whole season. Had 18 carries for 107 rushing yards. Dermestado, running back for the Arizona Cardinals, also had a huge explosive rushing touchdown at the end of the first half going into halftime for a touchdown. Had 59 rushing yards on 4 carries for the game. Also, rookie Trey Benson had a rushing touchdown too, and Trey McBride had a rushing touchdown as well. They owned the running game against the Bears and played a physical brand of football, and that's good when you can win multiple ways, because we've seen the Cardinals win explosively through Kyler Murray's running ability, but also his ability to extend plays and give the ball to players like Trey McBride, like Marvin Harrison Jr. at times, and other players of that nature. You have a good football team when you can win in multiple ways and still play good football, and their defense has been good too. Caleb Williams completed 22 out of his 41 passing attempts for 217 passing yards, but like I said, they weren't able to do anything. It was a field goal fest for them. I will say Rome Odunze, rookie, had a good game, had 5 receptions for 104 receiving yards, but I don't know, man, and it's getting loud in Chicago about Eberflus potentially being on a hot seat. I don't know about that though. A lot of people are so quick to rush out coaches, but the thing that's a detriment to a young quarterback, constantly bringing in new offensive schemes, different coaches, having them to basically restart and learn a new system every single year or every couple of years. That's not what you want. It brings dysfunction in my opinion, so I'm not too quick on that. I don't know, but it's not going to get any easier for the Bears because they're going to have to start division play in that rough NFC North soon. I always thought that they were going to be the one team out that probably won't make the playoffs in that division, but yeah, but the Cardinals, they're overcoming expectations and they look really good right now. I'm not going to lie. The Eagles, they did win this game 28-23, moving on to a 6-2 record, looking looking good. But the Jaguars, they did have a chance to come back if it wasn't for that Trevor Lawrence interception that he threw in the fourth quarter on the 1st and 10. That was bad. And really, you could say that's a nutshell for the Jaguars season so far. But the Eagles, offensively and defensively, they've been playing really complimentary football, which is good. And I will not stop talking about that Saquon Barkley play. Oh my goodness. Juke the defender with a nasty juke and spin move and then a reverse hurdle. Oh my goodness. That was disgusting. I easily think that's player of the year. Talked about the Garrett Wilson catch that took place on Thursday Night Football, but man, do you know how much athleticism that takes and how much awareness too? Man, Saquon Barkley has to be, I know it's a quarterback award, but he has to be an MVP candidate because of the impact that he's had on the Eagles, making the play action plays and really their offense ultimately overall easier for a player like Jalen Hurts, who had a good game, completed 18 out of his 24 passing attempts for 230 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley, let me talk about him some more, had 27 carries for 159 rushing yards and a touchdown. My goodness, also had 3 receptions for 40 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. Just hooping overall, playing really good. Jalen Hurts also had a rushing touchdown too on 67 rushing yards. Devontae Smith, 87 receiving yards on 4 receptions and a receiving touchdown. That was an impressive grab with one hand. And also hoping that AJ Brown is able to be okay. He got injured in the game too, but the Eagles, they're looking really good. They're playing great football offensively and defensively. They're going to be competing with the Commanders for sure in the NFC East to try to win that division. And we will see. There hasn't been a repeat division winner in that division for 20 years. The Cowboys won it last year. We know that they're not winning the division, so we're not talking about them. So it'll certainly be out of the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles for that division. And for the Jaguars, kind of similar to what I was talking about with the Bears in terms of firing a coach. I'm still not with it with Doug Peterson. He's won a Super Bowl with Philadelphia back in the 2017-18 season, and I just think that yes, they have the personnel to play good. I just think you give it one more year with Doug Peterson, because we saw them make the playoffs a couple of years ago, make the divisional round against the Chiefs where they lost. Just give it one more year. Trevor Lawrence does have to play better though. This game that he had is not going to cut it. Completed 16 out of his 31 passing attempts for 169 passing yards, no touchdowns and 2 interceptions. That's not good enough. So yeah, but the Philadelphia Eagles, they're looking good right now, and those Kelly green uniforms, you can make the argument that that's the best throwback in the league by far. This was another overtime game that took place between the Los Angeles Rams and the Seattle Seahawks, and the Rams won this game 26-20 and now have an even 500 record at 4-4. And now the Seahawks, who started off hot in the season, now have a 4-5 record. It's tough right now if you're a Seattle fan, but the Rams, they're still flourishing despite the injuries that they dealt with earlier in the season with Cooper Kupp and Puka being out. They were both available in this game, but Puka got ejected because he decided to throw some hands early in the game, but they still were able to withstand that and win the game. Matthew Stafford completed 25 out of his 44 passing attempts at 298 passing yards, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. Cooper Kupp had a really good game, had 11 receptions for 104 receiving yards. Demarcus Robinson also played well, had 6 receptions for 94 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. They played good offensively and defensively. On the flip side for the Seahawks, Geno Smith, he had a lot of passing yards in this game, but it was a streaky performance. He completed 21 out of his 34 passing attempts at 363 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions. So that tells you a lot there. Kenneth Walker had 25 carries, but for 83 receiving yards. So I would say the Rams did a solid job of stopping the run, even though then Jackson Smith and Jigma, you can make the argument he had his best game as a pro so far in his second season. Had 7 receptions for 180 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Of course, with DK Metcalf being out right now, someone had to step up. Also, Tyler Lockett had a receiving touchdown too. But man, the Seattle Seahawks, they're still trying to get things together. The Rams, it's a good win for them. They're still trying to get in the conversation to win a division, and you still have the 49ers creeping too. Christian McCaffrey is set to return in week 10 too, so that'll be an intriguing conversation. But right now, the Cardinals lead that division in the NFC West, so we'll see what transpires in that division, but it's a good win for the Rams. This divisional NFC North game between the Lions and Packers, it was really anticipated, but the Lions, they dominated the game, and the Packers winning 24-14. We know the conditions. It was rainy on Lambeau Field. Football weather for sure right here in November, but the Lions, they continue to play really good. They now have a 7-1 record. Jared Goff continuing to be the most efficient quarterback in the league so far. Completed 18 out of his 22 passing attempts. Only had to throw for 145 passing yards and a touchdown. Like I said, those conditions in the rain kind of made it hard to throw the ball a lot and, kick field goals and things of that nature. But the running game, they dominated. And even though David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs didn't have the most rushing yards, they still played a physical brand of football when they needed to. Jahmyr Gibbs had a rushing touchdown and also had 65 rushing yards on the game. David Montgomery had 17 carries for 73 rushing yards. And Amon-Ra St. Brown had 7 receptions for 56 receiving yards and a touchdown. Had a cool celebration, just like Drake London did as well with that upside down celebration that was live. But also their defense was able to force Jordan Love to a bad pick 6 at the end of the second quarter going into halftime. That was tough. You could obviously tell that Jordan Love was still hobbled in with that groin injury. He probably shouldn't have played this game. Probably wasn't worth it. They could have started Malik Willis, who played solid in the 2 starts that he did start when Jordan Love was out. But yeah, Jordan Love had that interception, had 273 passing yards, completed 23 out of his 39 passing attempts, but to no avail. And Josh Jacobs, he really dominated in the first half, but they kind of got away from that and were trying to play catch up, so that's understandable. He had 13 carries for 95 rushing yards. Emmanuel Wilson had a rushing touchdown. Jaden Reed had 5 receptions for 113 receiving yards, but like I said, it wasn't enough. And you can make the argument that the Lions are the best team in the league right now. I know the Chiefs, what they got going on defensively specifically, still carrying the load and still waiting for Patrick Mahomes to get things together, which like I said before, is scary because he hasn't even woke up yet. It's like he's saving himself for the playoffs. But the Lions, they just continue to buzzsaw through teams, and they're playing really dominant football right now. And like I said about Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff is also an MVP candidate right now so far too, so they're looking scary right now, and the best team in the NFC, I would say too, I might add. The Sunday night football game was okay between the Minnesota Vikings and the Indianapolis Colts. The Vikings won this game 21-13. They now have a 6-2 record, are second place in the NFC North right now after losing 2 straight games after starting off 5-0. And at first they started off slow, really both teams did, but were able to get things going. Sam Darnold had kind of an up and down game, but like I said, they ended up winning, and he threw the ball efficiently except for those couple of turnovers that he had, throwing 2 interceptions, but he completed 28 out of his 34 passing attempts, had 290 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson also had a really good game, had 7 receptions for 137 receiving yards, continuing to show why he's the best receiver in the league, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people would agree to that as well too. Jordan Addison, who also posted that Instagram story saying free 3, he ended up having a receiving touchdown, so hopefully he's happy from that. But like I said, when you have Justin Jefferson on the team, you're the second option for sure, and you have to know that already, but it is what it is with that. Josh Oliver also had a receiving touchdown, so they look good. The Colts, they weren't really able to get anything going. We all know about them benching Anthony Richardson after tapping out in the game against the Texans in week 8. Joe Flacco really didn't play that well, had 179 passing yards and an interception. I mean, for me, I don't understand what you think. I mean, yeah, Joe Flacco, he played really good with the Browns last year, and I think that he's one of the best backups in the league. You can make the argument that he is the best, but this team isn't a Super Bowl contender. They aren't a world beater. They can potentially maybe try to contend for a wild card spot, but I don't know about that because there's other teams in the AFC I would put over them. The Chargers, shoot, even the Broncos, the Bengals, and we'll see also about the Steelers or Ravens. Who wins that division? One of them will be wild cards. I think the Ravens will win it, honestly, but even those teams too, I'll put them over them as a wild card. So for the Colts, what are your expectations really? I mean, come on now. But like I said, it's a good one for the Vikings. They're looking to be hopeful playoff contenders. We'll see, but like I said, the Lions, they continue to own that division right now, and they're playing really good football, but it's a good win for Minnesota. The last game that took place on Monday Night Football was the matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, a kind of rematch of Super Bowl 55. Obviously, Baker Mayfield's now the quarterback in Tampa Bay instead of Tom, but anyways, it went to overtime, the third overtime game of NFL Week 9, and the Chiefs won the game 30-24 in the game-winning touchdown by Kareem Hunt. You kind of knew that once the Chiefs won the coin toss that it was over. You even saw Baker Mayfield's reaction to the Chiefs getting the ball, but both quarterbacks played good. There were no turnovers, at least from them, or interceptions. Obviously, Travis Kelce, he turned over the ball from a fumble, but the Bucs didn't score off of that, so it didn't make too much of a difference. But the Bucs played pretty good. We know how good of a defense that they have under Todd Bowles. I'm not surprised that they almost beat the Chiefs, and a lot of people are talking about that the Buccaneers should have went for 2, and Todd Bowles mentioned the weather conditions as why they didn't. Honestly, in my opinion, I could be wrong, you might disagree, I wouldn't have went for it. I think kicking the extra point was the right thing to do because I think the Chiefs would have stopped that extra point attempt, especially if they would have tried something at the run game. You know, the Chiefs are arguably the best in the league at stopping the run, so that wouldn't have happened, and then maybe they could have got something nice off of a play action pass potentially, but that's too much of a risk. I understand why they did that and didn't go for the 2, but it is what it is. Baker had a good game, completed 23 out of his 31 passing attempts, threw for 200 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. But my point about the Chiefs stopping the run game, it's crazy. Rashad White, he did have an early touchdown for the Buccaneers, but the Buccaneers total offense only had 95 rushing yards too. So like I said, the Chiefs defense stopped the run. Cade Otton had a pretty good game, had 8 receptions for 77 receiving yards and a touchdown. He's one of the more underrated tight ends in the league in my opinion. And then for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes had a really good game, completed 34 out of his 44 passing attempts for 291 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt had 27 carries for 106 rushing yards in that touchdown I mentioned. And then Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins, they really flourished against the Buccaneers. We'll talk about DeAndre Hopkins, of course, the newest weapon to that Chiefs offense, had 8 receptions for 86 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And that Remember the Titan celebration, that was hard for sure. That was nice. And then also Travis Kelce had 14 receptions for 100 receiving yards too. So a well-balanced game for both teams on both sides, and ultimately the Chiefs won. Still the only undefeated team in the league right now. And for the Buccaneers, they're going to continue to try to fight for that wild card picture, and once they are able to get Mike Evans back potentially after their bye, they could try to make a push there. But it really sucks without them having Chris Godwin right now. But the Chiefs, they're still undefeated, and they're still not even close to playing their best football yet. So now with this also being the same day as the NFL trade deadline, I wanted to talk about a few of the trades that took place. The most obvious one that we kind of saw foreshadowing the past few weeks was Zadarius Smith being traded to the Detroit Lions from the Cleveland Browns. With that Aiden Hutchinson injury, you know, they needed a new weapon to bolster up their pass rush to make a run, because like I said in the video, the Lions are arguably the best team in the NFL right now and definitively easily the best team in the NFC. So that was a good move for them. Also got to talk about in the NFC, the Washington Washington Commanders, trading for Marshawn Lattimore, cornerback for the New Orleans Saints. That's a really good move, gonna help their secondary even more. Commanders, they're all in too. They are gonna look really good. These NFC playoffs, of course the playoffs as a whole, but in the NFC specifically, it's gonna be a war zone for sure because these teams are really good. The Lions, even how the Eagles are playing right now, and then the Commanders, they're making a move too. That's gonna be really good. I'll have to talk about a couple moves from the Pittsburgh Steelers. They traded for wide receiver Mike Williams from the New York Jets. They were interested in him in the offseason, but ultimately Mike Williams chose to sign with the Jets, and with the Jets acquiring Devontae Adams a few weeks ago, his opportunities got fewer, and it opened up the opportunity for him to be traded to Pittsburgh. So I think that's gonna be good. Another weapon for Russell Wilson in that offense with that 6-2 record. They look good in the AFC right now. That's good for them. And then also they traded for Preston Smith, linebacker from the Green Bay Packers, to get some more defensive help for them. So the Steelers, they're also locked and loaded and trying to make a deep playoff run too. So good moves for them. Also Tre'Davious White on the Rams was traded to the Baltimore Ravens. So some more help in the Ravens secondary too. I like the NFL trade deadline. It's a little different than the NBA because sometimes we see some mega huge blockbuster deals, and sometimes we will in some years in the NFL too. But there's been a solid amount of moves to help some of these contenders try to get over the edge. Me personally, I like the Zadarius Smith to the Lions deal the most. Also, I can't not finish this video and not talk about the Cowboys trading for Jonathan Mingo. I will say this, he's a solid prospect. The Cowboys were interested in him in the 2023 draft, and obviously the Panthers drafted him 39th overall in 2023 with a 4th round pick. Man, I'm not gonna lie, kind of crazy, but it is what it is. Like I said, Jerry Jones just does his own things. Everything he does is unconventional. It's never gonna make sense, so it is what it is with that. I'm not gonna lie. Mingo, he has potential, but right now with Dak Prescott being on injured reserve, it's gonna be shaky in Dallas. Like I said, as a Cowboys fan, embrace the tank. We're not gonna be good this year. This division in the NFC East is either the Commanders or the Eagles division. They're gonna win it, so we'll see out of those two teams. Cowboys are not in the mix, and that's okay. You can't be great every single season, and they've been losing in the first round, I guess in 2022-23 season, the second round, every year losing early anyway. So if you're not winning the Super Bowl, you might as well be trash and try to load up. You still have some foundational pieces in Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, and of course Dak Prescott and other pieces, but they need a soft rebuild right now, and that's okay. With that being said though, guys, let me know your thoughts from NFL Week 9 and also from the NFL trade deadline. Let's talk in the comments down below, and just some of your outlooks for the rest of the season. We're going into NFL Week 10. Like I said, the season is rolling by, it's going by fast, but it's only getting better and better, and we're gonna continue to see the teams that are truly contenders, truly Super Bowl contenders, and it's a beautiful time. So let me know what y'all guys think about the trade deadline and NFL Week 9 in the comments down below. I appreciate you guys watching. Always make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at SwaggyRuss, and also on TikTok at SwaggyRuss02 for cooking videos, shorts, reels, more content, things of that nature. Know that you are loved. Jesus loves you. You are blessed. You are here for a reason. You have purpose. You're not here by mistake or accident. You matter. You are loved. Continue to be blessed. Y'all have a good one.